joining the Huntsmen podcast. Today is July 25th, 2021. This is episode 8. I'm with Yvonne. My name is Drew. We have a guest, Phurious Fill, who's going to discuss all things regarding cryptocurrency for us, some basic 101 kind of things. And we're going to, Yvonne and I are going to share asking Phil these questions. As a proviso, what we're discussing tonight does not constitute financial advice. I'll probably say this throughout the course of the show. So if anyone has any questions, that's the reason we're not offering any financial advice. I met Phil through his fiance, actually, a number of years ago. And Phil's a local guy. He lives in the same town that I do. And we've met and discussed cryptocurrency at some length. And Phil, you want to go ahead and start off a little bit with about yourself?
Yeah, sure. I won't talk too much about myself. There's more interesting things to talk about tonight. But basically, I have a mechanical engineering degree. I specialize in strategic thinking, inventing, things of that nature. I invented products for a company locally for about 10 years, and now I do the same thing for myself. Overall, I have about 30 patents and random things I've uncovered. I'm dabbling in designing games and board games. So as far as cryptocurrency went, the reason I got into it is I've been following, let's say, U.S. fiscal policy and the Federal Reserve and things like that for a while. It's been extremely frustrating. I came upon crypto, saw what that could mean, saw what it meant, got really excited about it, decided to do all the work and research. And being that I work for myself, I can listen to a lot of news podcasts, stay pretty in on the industry and what's coming out, what's happening. So I think it's high time I start sharing that with people, because there's a lot of misinformation going on from media, Congress people, senators, people that should be looking out for your best interest and absolutely are not. And I think it's high time that changes.
Well, that's excellent. Thank you. Well, thank you for being a guest of ours to really help us have this conversation.
Thank you.
With your interest in your background and maybe the type of people that will gravitate towards this type of topic, what's the basic explanation of what cryptocurrency is? Like, what is it?
That's a lot deeper of a question than I think you realize on the surface. Before we get into that, actually, if you don't mind, I would like to discuss what brought this about, and then that might help people understand where this came from and what it leads to. There's a whole picture to be painted here.
Sure.
So I'm not sure if people are aware, but in the United States, the dollar used to be backed by gold. So there was an underlying value that every dollar was an IOU for an equivalent amount of gold stored in the United States. That's no longer the case. We are now under what's called a fiat currency, that's FIAT, and basically that is a trust-based system. Our money is not backed by anything except for the fact that if I hand you a dollar bill, you for some reason believe that it's actually worth something when I give it to you. That's literally what we're running on right now. And if you look at the current economic policy and everything like that, you can see that that's not working out so well. People can just print dollars into oblivion. People with equity are getting richer and richer and richer and richer. People holding their currency are getting poorer and poorer and poorer as time goes on. The dollar is inflating at insane rates, and literally it's just making the wage gap bigger. And most people don't actually realize how that whole system works. In fact, the Federal Reserve, which prints our money, isn't even a government institution. It's a private institution, and the IRS actually works for them, not for our government. So when you're paying taxes, you're not actually paying taxes to the federal government, you're paying taxes to the IRS, and the IRS is giving that money to a private banking corporation called the Federal Reserve, which is extremely misleading. But yeah, so the government doesn't print money. The government takes a loan from a private bank to print money at interest and then redistribute it to everybody else. So literally every dollar that you're getting is making money for a private bank that, I don't think most people understand what's going on. So let's get into crypto now and why that came about. So essentially what crypto is you have to imagine it as almost betting on an economy, for example.
Sorry, we froze for a second.
Oh, okay.
What, Drew?
Froze, sorry.
No, we froze for a second, disappeared off the page. Go ahead. Sorry, Phil.
Oh, I did?
No, we all did.
Okay, sorry. If you know where, okay. Anyway, so when most people think of cryptocurrency, they think of something like a stock, something buying equity in a company. There's, I want some Microsoft, I want some anything. And then as that company makes more and more and more money, your stock value goes up and you can sell it. That is not what cryptocurrency is. That is a high misconception. Another thing that it's not is a Ponzi scheme. Now, there are some that aren't very good. You need to definitely do your research. Like with anything, there's good faith actors and bad faith actors. But what is a Ponzi scheme is the US dollar, because that just goes down in value. At least crypto sometimes goes up. So in layman's terms, cryptocurrency would be like, let's say at the creation of the United States, you have the founding fathers all sitting there and they're like, how do we create this country? What do we want it to run on? What's the basis of how we want to do business? Well, we want free market principles. We want these laws to keep everyone in check. We want everyone to be able to run within this particular framework to make whatever the heck they want. That would be the essence of cryptocurrency. It would be almost like what the US dollar should be, which is the ability to trade for goods or services within a marketplace. So you have to think of each of these cryptocurrencies as a specific marketplace with a specific purpose that the currency is allowing you to play in. And the better you think the marketplace is, the more useful you think it is, the more valuable that currency could be in the future. Now, because there's so many different marketplaces to create, you can get all kinds of different cryptocurrencies, from stuff that's more of like a store of value to stuff that's more like a money transfer, getting money from one country to another country extremely quickly, extremely cheaply. I'll go into all that. There are cryptocurrencies that are basically base codes, kind of, that other people can build their own cryptocurrency economies on top of, but then use that base code to kind of run the infrastructure, as it were, because they don't want to do that. They just want to focus on their own tiny little economy section. So the industry itself is growing tremendously. People have probably heard of something called DeFi, which stands for decentralized finance. And in layman's terms, what that's doing is it's taking power away from a central power and redistributing it to anyone. And it depends on the cryptocurrency. So none of this is, everything is this way, but I'm trying to be general here. But anyone that wants to be a validator or like a miner on a network can lend their computer processing power to that network, and using algorithms, they can use those computers, that processing power to power the transactions that make the economies work. And people get paid for that in different ways, depending on what the cryptocurrency is. So it's really, really, really neat that we can enter a trustless system where, instead of having to go to a bank or someone who's been given an authority over you, a lot of these cryptocurrencies work in a way that, you say, well, how do you trust what's coming from these random people, right? Well, whenever they're validating a transaction, say you have 100 people, well, the correct information is going to be far more common amongst those strangers, because they don't know who each other are. So if the correct answer is 2, well, you might have 70 people send back an answer of 2. You might have one guy over here trying to disrupt the system, and he might say 5. A guy over here might say 7, a guy over here might say 1, and a guy over here might say 12. But whenever you look at what the most answers are that you're getting, that's pretty much always going to be the correct answer, because the correct answer is the one that everyone can actually mathematically calculate or arrive at the correct answer for. All the other ones are just kind of random guesses, and unless there's some way for them to all communicate with each other and all scheme together, which is very, very, very rare, and cryptocurrencies come a long way in preventing that from happening. It's an extremely safe and effective way to do things, which allows people to act as their own banks, to loan out money, to loan out the value of cryptocurrency to other people without anyone else having to be involved, and the money is completely safe no matter where it's going. It's possible now to transfer millions of dollars from someone in the United States to someone all the way across the world in 2 seconds for fractions of a penny. Whereas, you try to do that now and talking about wire transfers and days and loads of money and lots of time and energy. So it's really, really fascinating. I hope that gives you a general sense of kind of the exciting future of where all this can go.
Yeah, absolutely. It's, I never really thought about cryptocurrency in actually in those terms. Still very mysterious to me. So this was a great explanation. Drew, you may have been more kind of in tune with it than I, but this is very insightful.
Thank you. Like Drew said, this is going to be hopefully a kind of 101. So I don't know how deep you want me to get into this. I could get pretty deep if you wanted me to. One thing I would like to say that's just from the outset is if you are going to start doing your own research into cryptocurrency, which I highly recommend you do, anything I say, go look it up for yourself, confirm it. You should never take anyone's word for anything on this stuff because, like I said, there are always bad faith actors trying to get you to do stupid things. But I would argue the worst bad faith actors are actually the mainstream media and politicians. They're terrible, terrible people. And just to give you a glimpse of what I'm talking about here, when the 2008 market crash happened in the housing crisis, there were people that knew, bankers, politicians, journalists, there were people that knew, in my opinion, that exactly what was going to happen. They didn't tell you. They didn't tell me. They didn't tell anybody. Heck, those people didn't even go to prison. They do not look out for your interests, and the only reason they're telling you not to invest in cryptocurrency now is because they don't want to take the risks because they already have the power. And honestly, most of them don't even understand what the heck all this is anyway, because it's kind of technical. What's a blockchain? What's the difference between Bitcoin, Ethereum, XRP, Cardano, different projects? They have no idea. And until their masters tell them what to say, they don't want to know. And heck, they probably don't even want to know then. So it's really, really disingenuous what's happening. Quick example, Elizabeth Warren. She just released a statement, I believe, that I heard about where she called cryptocurrency a societal pestilence or something very close to that, which is absolutely insane. She talks about Bitcoin as if it represents all of cryptocurrency and talks about the energy requirements of Bitcoin, which is true. Bitcoin has a competitive energy problem for sure, but there are cryptocurrencies out there that use less than 1% of the energy that Bitcoin uses. That's actually green energy that could help save the planet, save people money, bring finance to third world countries and all kinds of people and get around corrupt governments and everything. But she'll talk about cryptocurrency as if it's all Bitcoin and say it uses too much energy. It's fraud. It's this, it's that. She knows full well it's not. And the only reason she says that stuff is because she wants to maintain power. Because blockchains cannot be manipulated. They're depending on the network, but let's talk about 95% of them. Most of them cannot be manipulated. They don't need governments to work. They're completely people-centric. And if all of these things end up happening, which it's going to, there's almost no way to stop it. The US dollar is the current world, it's the global reserve fiat currency. Everyone in the world wants out from underneath our thieving butts and really is in support of this. The only country that's not is really the United States of America, as we have the most to lose. And she knows the moment this goes in and people don't need the government anymore, she can't just start stealing money and funneling it to whatever district they want, and all this stuff can be tracked and all of their power and corruption are just going to go crazy. I mean, this is literally the greatest good for humanity since a very, 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 very long time. But when people are telling you to be scared, you shouldn't be scared. This is exciting and amazing. You should definitely be cautious. You should definitely do good projects. and understand that you're your own bank at this point, and understand how to secure yourself, how to get a cold storage wallet, how everything works. Go to YouTube, find out what you're doing before you start to invest. But scared, social pestilence, no, far from it. It's the exact opposite. They just don't want you in until they've already made $1 billion.
Yeah, Phil, it's almost like she's trying to make Senator Warren is trying to make it sound like cryptocurrency is the next new boogeyman.
Yeah, because it's a complete
power
trip.
Good for you. Yeah.
Would
you please mind explaining? Because when in our previous conversations, and I don't support any sort of, I'm not sponsored by any crypto wallet or anything like that. I'm just a guy who just tried to, I've got a crypto wallet. I bought $100 worth a couple of things and just sitting there watching it to see what it will do. And I'm not advocating that anyone dump their 401ks or their retirements or their pensions. They jump into this without any, they've got, like Phil said, you've got to do your own homework. You have to have a basic understanding that what it is. It's a line of code in a ledger. Would you mind elaborating on that, Phil, for me?
Yeah, no problem. So again, all cryptocurrency different, but yeah, I guess this is getting back to your earlier question. What is it exactly? So imagine an open source code with rules, almost like a constitution, being released online of a specific cryptocurrency. So you want to create this particular economy, you make it, you release the token online, and then people are able to buy it. And again, we're talking general sense here, but so anyone can go in there, they can see the rules, they can see how it operates, they can see what the inflation rates are, how the miners or validators get paid, who they are, all of that. So that's fantastic. And so when you're investing in cryptocurrency, something might have, say, 100,000 tokens to it. That's a random number, most are far more than that. But if you buy a tokenized asset of something, you own part, I don't want to say you own part of the code, but you have a wallet address that anyone can track, that anyone can see what's in there. They don't know it's yours, but the whole process is completely transparent. So it's like a picture of all these addresses and all these wallets and how much of each cryptocurrency they have in them. Okay, and anyone can see what that is. And so when you buy that, cryptocurrency will go from someone who sold into this different wallet address that anyone can see that money went from here to here. And again, your name isn't really linked to this address. The only reason this address is yours is because you have the keys to open it. It's like your vault, right. But if someone stole the keys to your vault, then they could get it. But the point is, though, is you are owning a portion of that open source coin, let's say. Like you're owning part of a ledger that cannot be manipulated. Like no one has the full power access to go in and just wipe your funds away. Like that goes back to all these validator systems and stuff. And
the ledger does get full. I mean, this is not these things. Tokens are, there is no perpetual production of them. There's a finite amount per ledger.
It depends on the cryptocurrency, but yeah, like for example, Bitcoin will eventually run out. You will run out of Bitcoin on a certain schedule that has been released that everyone knows about, completely transparent. And eventually all the Bitcoin in the world that can be created will be mined and no more Bitcoin can be created. There are cryptocurrencies that run on like a voting mechanism where people could eventually vote to, again, it depends on the cryptocurrency. That's why you have to know what you're talking about before you invest in it, because there's 12,000 cryptocurrencies, and I can't speak to every single one. They're all different. But in the general case, you usually have a set finite amount. And as you buy some of that amount, it's yours, and it doesn't really go away. And yeah, like right now, because crypto is so new and no one knows what they're doing with it, and half the people don't even know what it is, people get scared in the market really easily, which is why you see these huge fluctuations. You also have a lot of people leverage trading, which can cause a lot of that. So, you might get in when it's high. You should try not to do that. But sometimes you do, and then it goes down 50% and people freak out. Oh, my thing's worthless. It's no. You have to understand 1% of the use case of these tokens is currently being done. The amount of good that these can do, like the market for these economies is going to be, in my opinion, absolutely insane. We haven't even scratched the surface yet. So all the price volatility of what you're seeing now is virtually worthless if you're in the right coins. You just have to be mentally tough enough to know what you have, know where it's going, and not be manipulated by fear or excitement either direction, and keep your brain on you and make good decisions. I will say what's funny, though, is people really like the US dollar. I have no idea why. The US dollar only ever goes down. At least crypto goes up sometimes.
So with this, you said at some point, Bitcoin, and I may be interpreting some of this incorrectly. So you said, like, at some point Bitcoin will no longer be mined, right? Like there was kind of an endpoint to that. If yes. That's okay. And then, so what does that mean for the people that have invested in Bitcoin? What happens then? What does that mean?
There's a couple different schools of thought on that, and no one knows for sure, but most of your libertarians and Bitcoin people would argue that that's going to make it even more profitable because it's going to be even rarer now and you can't get any more. It would be like, what if you ran out of gold on the planet and now the price of gold skyrockets because you can't mine anymore, you can't find anymore, it's all owned, and that should possibly shoot the price to the roof. Now, my personal opinion, I'm not big on Bitcoin. I don't extraordinarily like I am partially libertarian. I like some of what it stands for, decentralized and everything. Excuse me. But overall, I find it to be slow. It uses too much energy. I feel like they could fix some of the problems, but they really aren't. I think there are better projects out there. But then again, I'm not rooting against it necessarily. I hope it does well. I don't wish bad on anybody. So in answer to your question, it could go up, if by that time, I mean, that shouldn't be for a while still. So if by that time Bitcoin has become some kind of standard that everyone's running on, most likely you would have enough validators interested, or miners interested in keeping the network running, that they would actually keep it running so the value of their Bitcoin doesn't drop. Because if the Bitcoin network all of a sudden stops running, well, your Bitcoin's kind of worthless. But I do tend to think by that point, not financial advice, it's just my opinion, look it up, that there are better utility tokens out there that do far better. Like their metrics are way better for different use cases. And honestly, I think Bitcoin was first. Like, think about it as if it's like the original iPhone 1. Awesome for its time, great for what it did, but now we're at a time in which iPhone 1 is kind of irrelevant. And I just think Bitcoin's the one everyone's heard of. And once it gets flipped, they call it the flippening, which means when the market cap for a different coin gets higher than Bitcoin, that people will be like, why do I have this thing that doesn't really do anything when I can own things that actually do things? So I think at that point, you'll see Bitcoin start to die out. Could be wrong, but that's my opinion. That's why I'm not really.
And it's not a tradable. It's not a tradable stock. It's a currency.
Yes, it's a currency. It's like I said,
and
like you have to think Bitcoin like an economy.
Which will dovetail into my next question about, there's a current SEC lawsuit, Security Exchange Commission. On December 23rd last year, as the director was walking out the door, he filed a lawsuit against a company called Ripple. And part of Ripple has their cryptocurrency is called XRP. And they filed a lawsuit against them claiming that it's not a currency, that it's a tradable stock, and it's not. Would you care to kind of not so much go through the lawsuit, but that was pretty shady for them. The guy, I can't think of what was the name of the SEC dude that filed it on the way out. You remember?
I believe that was Jay Clayton.
Yeah. He's walking out the door. Yeah, file it, and
Yep.
It's
Jay Clayton, and then another guy being deposed called William Hinman has some seemingly corrupt and shady dealings around Ethereum, and saying things about Ethereum not being a tradable security, despite the fact that it appears that Ethereum had an initial coin offering, which seems to be the bar they like to set for something of being a tradable security or not, rather than a currency. So the fact that he got seemingly millions of dollars from a company associated with the Ethereum Foundation seems to me to at least be
skullduggery.
Yeah.
and Ethereum is another form of cryptocurrency. The guy left the SEC, shows up on the doorstep at Ethereum, and they hand him something with a bunch of money in it. So
yeah, basically it was a company that, from my understanding, but it was a company he worked for before he got into the SEC. Then he made these comments while he was at the SEC, and then upon leaving the SEC, he got rehired by this company and then got a gigantic payout. So make your own assumptions.
Well, and this is not going to be the first time we're going to have Phil on. We're going to have Phil on subsequent podcasts. So,
well, I still have some basic questions. So
by all means, ask away.
Yeah. Let's do that before we get into the lawsuit.
Exactly,
yeah. I feel like this still needs to be pulled down a little bit for me. So again, I know this is very basic. So does all cryptocurrency have to be mined? And I'm not quite sure that I understand. And I've heard this before about the energy concern. I don't really grasp what's behind that. The energy.
Which one would you like me to answer first?
Whichever one you want to go for.
Yeah, let's talk about energy first, since that is mined. So this is going to get kind of complicated. So bear with me. I'm going to try to dumb this down, not dumb, but make this simple as best I can. Yeah. This won't be extraordinarily accurate because, again, it's more complicated than this, but, work with me. All right, so you take a picture with a digital camera, 10 megapixel camera, take a snapshot of something, right? That 10 megapixel camera, that picture is a digital representation of colors and pixels, all held within an extremely long algorithm that tells the computer how to recreate that image as a picture whenever you download it. Yes? That makes sense?
Yes. Yep, I'm with you.
Cool. Great. So how does this work? Bitcoin works on something called proof of work. And what that does is it basically pits every miner on the Bitcoin network against each other to try to get as much processing power as possible, except it creates a system of competition. So only the people that get the correct answer, as it were, or the first people to come up with the correct algorithm to validate the transaction get paid in Bitcoin. So the best way to mine Bitcoin is to have as many computers as possible outputting as many transactions as possible in a brute force attempt to literally recreate what it wants you to recreate. So I brought up the picture thing, like you're saying, how is that anything? Well, imagine if that picture is the Bitcoin ledger, the Bitcoin block that you want to validate. And it takes a snapshot of that and basically says, okay, here's what happened in this block. Here's what and it generates an algorithm based on what happened and then spits out a final really, really, really long equation, if it were. Your job as a Bitcoin miner is to have your computer literally make up as many possible iterations of that snapshot and generate as many of those equations as humanly possible until it finds the one image that generates the algorithmic equation that matches the Bitcoin block that was created. And if that's you, you get Bitcoin. That's why you get Bitcoin mining operations. Have you heard of that? Like whole warehouses that just have computers running and running and running and running and running and running. We're talking about quadrillions of transactions a second. Not an hour, not a minute, a second. We're mind-blowing amounts of processing power here because everyone wants to be the first to the door, and the more transactions you run, like the more computational power you have, the better odds you have of that being you. Not a perfect representation, but it's close. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes, it does.
No? Yes.
No. Yep.
Right. Okay. And you are going to get paid in Bitcoin. And the thing on Bitcoin, and I'm just going to mention this really quick, is they have something called a halving schedule, like 1/2. And what ends up happening is as more and more and more Bitcoin gets mined, your reward for validating the transaction gets cut in half. So once it reaches certain points, you get less and less and less and less money for doing the same amount of work in Bitcoin, which theoretically and seemingly in reality drives up the Bitcoin price. Because if you're getting 1 Bitcoin for validating a transaction and it's worth $10, all of a sudden when that gets cut in half and you're doing the same work and only getting half a Bitcoin, well, the value of that Bitcoin needs to rise to $20 to keep people happy doing the same amount of work for the Bitcoin, which drives up the price. Supply and demand, simple kind of economic structure there.
And with all that processing power going around, and all these transactions, and all these computers needing power, that's where the green thing comes in. The green part of it comes into place because of the fact that it's probably a coal-fired plant that's supplying that power.
Yeah, it is. And to be honest, like they talk about, let's get more green energy in the Bitcoin network. That's great. That's all well and great, but let's be honest, like I don't care how much green energy you have, you can always put that energy somewhere else. Even if you're not increasing your carbon footprint, why are you running a network that uses 100 times, possibly more than that whenever things get really crazy, the amount of energy that you need to actually do the things that it does faster, more efficiently, and cheaper? Why? Because people like the idea of circumventing the government and the banks, which I do too, but I think there's a better way to do that, or possibly even create a network where some things are working with governments and banks, because I don't think you're ever going to get rid of those as a mature person that lives in reality. I think there's always those kind of people that exist. And then you'll have other side projects that try to remain decentralized and people-based. I think you're going to have a little bit of both. So hopefully that explains what mining is. What was your other question?
Is all cryptocurrency mined? In which it sounds like, okay, no.
No, not at all. That's one of the biggest things in cryptocurrency is how do you validate transactions? And again, I'm trying to keep this on a base level understanding, and this is all per my understanding. So do your own research. I'm just here to try to get you started. So Bitcoin, we just went over that. There's something called proof of stake, which is not proof of work, obviously, and it's a step up. And what that basically runs on is the idea that the more you own something, the more valuable it is to you to keep that thing running. So instead of, for example, with Bitcoin, everyone being kind of the same no matter how much you own, which is a cool concept in general, like they all have the same power as long as they're processing the power and running the transactions, they can get rewarded. In a proof of stake system, though, if you own 90% of a network, the odds of you being a bad faith actor to destroy the very network that you own the currency in are extremely low. You follow what I'm saying there? Okay. So in that case, they give, let's just say, more voting rights, more voting power to the people that actually hold more currency in a particular cryptocurrency. So what that does is that decreases the competition and makes it more of a let's work together kind of thing to make our system more efficient and cheap to run, and let's get more people on it, and the more people we can get involved, the more people are going to use it, the faster it's going to be, all those great things. And so it's more of a cooperative network, which decreases the amount of processing power needing to shoot things back and forth. And that's been a big breakthrough in blockchain technology. You also have ones like XRP, and XRP runs a little bit differently. Even it used to be mostly bought up by a company called Ripple. They basically dropped a coin. I believe it was called Open Coin at the time. They bought a ton of it for very, very, very cheap because they knew what it could do. Ripple didn't actually exist at the time. And then around the fact that they bought all of this coin, they created a company that would be able to utilize this coin that they had to make a really good business run, which is kind of genius. But what they end up doing is people that partner with them, people that will use the XRP ledger to validate transactions and create a global worldwide network that can create a really good economy for people to work on with this cryptocurrency, they will give, I will say give, but like sometimes they'll gift XRP, or sometimes they'll, like, part of a deal will be letting a company have a certain amount of XRP and giving them validation rights to be validators on the network, kind of like in a proof of stake thing, except it's not mined at all. The value gained from running the XRP ledger is so immense, it's so fast and so cheap that they are all just going to cooperate to keep it going, because the loss from letting the network be bad and have bad faith actors on it is catastrophic from a monetary standpoint. So they have no reason to do that whatsoever. Everyone involved in the network has more to gain by being good than by being bad. So those are some general ways in which cryptocurrencies can be ran, let's say. I will say another thing is, like with Bitcoin, there's only a certain number of Bitcoin. With some other ones, they have inflation schedules, which can sometimes, like, say, I think Algorand runs somewhere at 6%. That's a cryptocurrency that you can build other stuff on. And, you know, some of that goes to marketing. Some of that goes to paying the people that use the processing power to make the network go. Some of that's used to fund side projects to actually get more people building stuff on the networks. The more use cases you have, the more people involved, the better your economy is. So great. So it's really neat to see all the different projects and how they're coming up with creative ways to try to create fast, efficient cryptocurrency ecosystems. And they're all built with a specific purpose in mind to try to make what they're doing as efficient and productive as possible.
The shared I was thinking about this as you were talking about the quadrillions of brute force things to brute force processing power to go to see who can get there first, basically, to get their payment for the miners to be paid. I remember back in the late 90s, I used to process share with SETI, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. It was out of Palo Alto, I think. I think UC Berkeley is what it was, and they created a screen saving program. And what you did was you would log in and download their screen saving program, and they would send you bits of the equation they were working on. And they did this, it's a lot better it was a lot easier, more economical, I would suppose. I don't have those numbers in front of me, so I may be guessing on this, but instead of having one massive Gondo, room-sized computer trying to crunch all this stuff, to have 10,000 home PCs chewing on a little bit at a time. And then that way they'd be able to get the answer. In fact, the 90% of the human genome was mapped the same way. And a lot of people don't realize that.
Right.
And I think there'll be a time will come when, the cryptocurrency market will look back on this and say, this may be a more efficient way to get that done. But the problem is you're dealing with an issue of who gets there the fastest. So it's it would not work who wants to get on first, basically.
Right. It's basically the difference between a consensus mechanism and a competition mechanism. You've probably heard of Ethereum before, and like Ethereum's great because what they tried to do is they use something called gas, and so every transaction that you put through, you can take a portion of what you're trying to put through and you basically pay the validators yourself to basically say, hey, look at my transaction. I'll pay you this much for putting it through. Please do so. Which sounds great if the network isn't overloaded. But the problem comes in if there's a ton of people using it and you're all of a sudden trying to send $20 from yourself to Drew, let's say, and I am trying to send $2 million from myself to some guy over there, I can afford to pay $1,000 in gas to make that go through almost immediately. You are trying to send $20 over there. They're just going to ignore you. So either your stuff isn't going to go through, or you're going to have to end up paying $100 to get someone to notice that you're trying to send $20 over there, which is a really big problem right now, and it's something they're trying to address with Ethereum 2.0, which is something they're working on. The only issue for that is there are other projects out there that can kind of already do what they're trying to do. So, Ethereum's really popular. It's been around for a while, but there are other projects that are kind of ahead of them in the game, in my opinion.
And Yvonne, they one of the crypto wallet that I currently use offers a debit card that you can go and use a debit card to pay for goods and services with your cryptocurrency. There's a conversion process through it, and so it's not like it's all these geeky guys and it's like they've got their line of code and that's it. No, I mean they've gone. And I'd strongly encourage people if they want to kind of play around with it a little bit, is just go ahead and look at any crypto wallet and invest $100 in whatever cryptocurrency they want to, and kind of see what happens with it. But then again, we're not here's our midpoint. What we're discussing does not constitute financial advice. So
yes, yeah, this is instructional. We're trying to teach you guys how to get started, what this is, that you shouldn't be afraid of it. You should definitely check it out, go understand it, because this is the future and there's no denying it. So try to run, but it'll be here, whether you like it or not. So might as well get in on it while the getting is good. There's only about 1% of the human population actually is in on it right now. There's a lot of potential left.
What's the risk?
All right, that's a great question. There are a ton of risks, and so it depends on what, and I guess I'll just go over a few of them just to give people an idea of what to expect. Mm-hmm. You should always do your own research. Don't trust anyone. People are shilling coins trying to get you to go after what they like. News media. So, like I said, most of this is open source. A lot of these creators are really good about sending out videos about what they're doing. They have really good communities around them, but always understand the people talking to you usually have some sort of bias. And you should try to find a source, just like with anything, that gives you a good opinion, a bad opinion, and figure out where the truth is. So there's a risk in that, in just what information you're getting. There's the big risk in the fact that you are your own bank here. Like I said, nothing is linked to your name at all. It's all in addresses that you have the passwords and keys to, that people will try to phish you for, scam you for, get you to give up your secret wallet passwords. And as long as you understand the basic rules of what to do and what not to do, it's not that hard. It really is. And it's quite simple. I'd say almost anyone can do it. However, there is a bit of a learning curve, so you should definitely go look at YouTube instructional videos on how that works, how to do it, spend the time, really understand it. And then after you do, transferring money is easy. Using all these things is easy, and you won't really have to worry about it. But make sure your computer is free of viruses. I would download some kind of keystroke encryptor kind of thing. There are free programs that do that. And just, be careful with what you're doing online. Like I said, you are your own bank. And if you want to set up two-factor authentications on your phone, so you put your password in over here on this website, and then before you can get in on the website, you have to have your phone, and then they give you a second password, and you plug that in with a randomly generated number every 60 seconds. That is great. It helps keep people out of your funds. So people have to understand that they need to take the security for this very, very, very seriously. Another thing is, obviously, there are governments that don't really like this stuff. Social pestilence and whatnot. So the
societal pestilence.
Yeah. So
Says,
you have to understand.
It's like Elizabeth Warren, saying that kind of shit's really funny.
Oh yeah, there's the people that can control the markets want to continue to control them. There may or may not be certain politicians that their husbands may or may have not found out that the government was going to purchase a bunch of Teslas, and then may or may not have allegedly told their husband, to invest in said company and walk away with tons of money and then not get investigated. But no, I'm no.
Okay, real quick, Yvonne, did you have a follow up to that or
no?
Okay,
no. She says what's on her mind. She really does.
Yeah.
And don't let that charm fool you. She's a really very smart lady. Anyway,
other risks though. The last risk I will say is the government. The last risk is, like, I would say before, when crypto was just a few billions of dollars, now we're sitting at like 1.2 trillion. So the odds of this just vanishing into nothing is very, very, very low. Especially since other countries are now like creating sandboxes that actually that's a term for basically like playgrounds for people to experiment with cryptocurrencies, and don't really have to follow the laws for a few years, so they can actually try to build things in this really exciting technology. People see it as a way of, getting control of their own finances, maybe even having some kind of global reserve currency that everything is based in. And you might have your own government coins for your own separate governments, but they'll all still be based in a fully traceable, transparent cryptocurrency that holds everyone accountable and doesn't just let you move money around willy-nilly and do what you want to it, which is not appetizing to certain politicians who definitely want to try to get in the way of that until they have proper controls over it. So be careful what exchanges you use. Stay with the mainstream ones. And if you can, research a cold storage wallet like a Tether or a Ledger. And that allows you to get your cryptocurrency off the exchanges online. So then even if the government goes after the exchanges online, your stuff isn't online. It's offline and in a cold storage encrypted USB wallet that is yours. And if you left the country or waited until there was better policy in place, you would be able to still maintain control of your cryptocurrencies. Those things
and
are
access
extremely
that wherever you had, the ability to, to use a laptop or whatever computer and internet connectivity, and then you're in. So
so there are ways to mitigate these risks.
I mean, it's not a bad thing. It's almost the same thing as burying money in the backyard in glass jars.
Yeah, pretty much. Because not saying you can't trust people, but I think we're learning that you can't trust people.
Exactly. Briefly, a lot of people poo-poo cryptocurrency because Elon Musk got in, then got out in one day, and that how, Bitcoin took a dive, and, Elon Musk has been hoisted as this, great, gigantic, smart dude, and he was in, didn't like it, and left. And I think there's some backstory to that kind of needs to kind of come to light so people can have a better understanding of why he did what he did, or okay, so one guy did this, didn't like it, and got out,
Well, that's actually, I will say that's not actually how that happened. Even though I'm not a Bitcoin guy, I am in crypto, so I know kind of what happened. But he ended up getting into Bitcoin, and like with anything, did not tell anyone he was going to get into Bitcoin, like, news media and people like that do. They don't want it going up before they buy it. He bought a lot of it. I believe it was in the billions of dollars. And he announced that he would allow Bitcoin to be used to buy Tesla vehicles. I believe that was when Bitcoin was somewhere in the range of $40,000-ish per Bitcoin. So he basically did that, and then he started to find out more about it, and realized there were huge energy implications and things like that, and kind of said, okay, wait a second, I'm not comfortable with how this works. I'm no longer accepting Bitcoin for the Teslas anymore until they can figure out how to better use the energy or fix the competition system, which they haven't done. What they have done is come out with things like Bitcoin Pizza and other really stupid projects, but whatever. Anyway, so he didn't really sell it. He just kind of backtracked on his
Desire
promise
to buy
to let
it.
people use Bitcoin to buy a Tesla. Now, he
Mhm.
did end up doing what he called a test of, I think it was liquidity is what he called it, when Bitcoin was in the $50,000 range, and he sold some of it, but it was like 100 million or something. It wasn't a huge amount compared to how much he actually had. And from what I understand, I don't think he sold any more since. But like I said, most people in cryptocurrency, they see it going up, then they see people starting to talk about it, their friends or whatever's like, I made some money, yay. And they get in without understanding what any of this is, what any of these projects do. And therefore, when one billionaire that does some cool things that, admittedly I
Mhm.
like,
Yeah,
he
does.
but when they say one thing, it's like, oh my gosh, I have to get in, or he says one bad thing, oh my gosh, and now it's crashing 30% because people don't know what they have. They don't know what they
Then
have.
they
They
realize,
don't
oh
know
my
what it
God,
does.
the sky is falling and I got to get out.
Yep. Lemmings jumping off a cliff, man. That's this market in general. You have to think about things in a long-term sense, not let the whims of people that have no idea what's going on here affect your long-term prospects because eventually this is going to turn a corner and it's going to be everywhere
Hopefully soon.
like that. Yeah, I mean, you talked about the Ripple lawsuit, and that's really holding things up.
If you could just hold on to that for just a second, Yvonne, did you have anything else that you wanted to ask Phil?
Yeah.
No, I mean, that was good. Thank you.
Phil, could you
okay.
use the?
Are you sure? Because I feel like I'm either doing a really good job or I'm not explaining things very well because you just keep saying no and not having any follow-up questions for me.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's a lot of information.
Okay.
And no, so it definitely answers my questions, especially like I said, just even on the energy side of it. You hear people say that, but it's like, what exactly does that mean? So you provided an excellent answer regarding that.
Thank you. Glad it made sense.
If you could, when we first talked, the first time that we met, would you mind briefly illustrating the Ethiopian example of the benefits of cryptocurrency and what it could do for that country?
Yeah, absolutely. That is and you can look it up. There's research. You can Google this story. It's everywhere. But there is a cryptocurrency called Cardano, which was actually created by Charles Hoskinson. I believe that I pronounced that right, or really close. He was one of the original guys in the Ethereum project, but he figured that it wouldn't be able to scale properly, and he brought up issues with it that he didn't like, and they kind of ignored him, and so he left to create his own thing, and he created this thing called Cardano, which he wants to be a giant worldwide humanitarian project, on top of being a really good platform for anyone to build on and use. But he's basically going to third world countries, and Ethiopia is one of these third world countries that is going to be able to validate or like run computers on this network. And they have a whole deal going on where they're teaching their school kids how to code on the Cardano network to create their own virtual economies for the future. So instead of having to rely on natural resources in that country to try to bring themselves out of it, they're literally going to be able to code their way into becoming a prominent country and have access to full financial, markets all throughout the world. Because through the Cardano network, anyone in the Cardano network, whether it be U.S., Haiti, somewhere in Great Britain, France, doesn't matter, Russia, where have you, they're all connected on that same network. So therefore, they are also connected on that same network, and then they'll be able to build mini coins that do specific little things that can either transfer to just their own little economies or can do worldwide things that allow them to track things or get funding from other countries to do things within their country. It's going to completely change people's lives in a way that no charity, no project, no anything ever has or has had the potential to be able to do. And on top of this, since these blockchains are so transparent, no one can steal these people's money. Like no one can throw them, I'll just use like a term off the top of my head, like throw them under the bus and underpay them or be a bank and abuse them and give them less than what they should, because every transaction that goes through on this network is completely trustless. And if someone says they're getting something, then by gosh, they're getting it, and they can prove it. And like once you enter into a contract on a blockchain, there's no way out. It happens. So it's really, really, really fantastic. This could be the best, like I said before, the best technological advancement in the history of humanity for
if
helping
it's done
people
right
on an ethical level. It's really fascinating.
If it's done right, I mean, it could really pull people out of the third world. It really could.
Absolutely.
Instead
it's
of
fascinating.
Then you're not going to have any Somalias. You're not going to have any, Mogadishus and Yemen and, ruled by, warlords and just the horrible things that people do to each other. Which is we're not going to touch on now, but I am going to put a
just
teaser
think about all
in.
the companies that are not happy about that.
And yeah, exactly.
I don't want to go into.
They'll have to pivot and rethink their strategy. Is what they're going to have to do.
Right. Well, and everyone can track what they're doing now too, which is great. But once this gets implemented, assuming it's implemented correctly. But you even talk about now, there's been wars that have been started allegedly for countries that they don't talk about that just didn't want to join the World Bank, that didn't want to accept World Trade Organization trade policies, and the next thing you know, they're being bombed for. Yeah, that's a whole other video. But hopefully,
exactly.
This puts a stop to all that. That would be great.
Well, we're going to go ahead and stop right now. We're right at about 56 minutes or so. I would like to put a teaser out there, and the next time that we have you on is to discuss the SEC lawsuit against Ripple and XRP. Don't say a word right now because this is something that we're going to do. Down the road. Without we're not going to talk about it right now. And when we do talk about it, we're not going to get into the nuances and everything. But it'll be a really interesting thing, I think, because then
absolutely
hitting the news.
Before then, can I tell people that they should research it if you're interested at all? If you want to research one thing, look into XRP and the SEC lawsuit from all angles. I'm not telling you to go to people that tell you one way or the other. There is a really good YouTube station I'll give a shout out called Legal Briefs that could probably bring you up to speed from the beginning on kind of how this has evolved. We will go into that more next time, but definitely I would start with that cryptocurrency if you are interested in starting anywhere.
Well, this has been fantastic. I have to say, this is such a fascinating topic, and just your wealth of knowledge, just even being able to explain it to someone like me, but still keep Drew very interested. I mean, kudos to you. So
thank you.
No, and I meant that in a good way, because you got a wallet, right? So you're
it's a start. Yeah.
With this. So.
And finally, what else? What I'll say to our subscribers and audiences, what we're discussing does not constitute financial advice. And with that said, please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Hit the bell icon to be notified when a new podcast is coming out. And our email address is huntsmanpodcast, all spelled out one word, @gmail.com. And with that, Phil, thanks for your time. I really, really appreciate it. Yvonne, it was
thanks
a
for
great
having me
time
on
as well. And I'm going to go ahead and end the broadcast now, and no one go anywhere, okay?
All right. See you guys.